All right, we're inching closer to lunch, but we have a little different format now. We have a few speakers, and we're going to break it up. They're going to come up and chat, and then we'll have a little panel discussion after those. They're bringing an extensive amount of experience in helping golf courses reduce water usage. And leading off from the USGA is Brian Whitlock. He's a senior agronomist. A lot of you probably know him quite well. He's a certified professional soil scientist who conducts visits throughout the Southwest, and it's quite an unbelievable region and diverse number of golf courses and styles and grass types that he gets to see. So Brian, please come on up, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thanks, John. So good morning everyone. Happy to be here. I do course visits all throughout Arizona, Nevada, California, Hawaii, and it's been about 15 years now with the USGA. And we've talked about water all of those 15 years, and I feel really privileged to work among what I consider really the best superintendents in the country at managing water. Every superintendent that I work with in the Southwest is motivated to use water wisely and efficiently. The more water we put on the golf course, the more you have to mow it. The more thatch is produced, and that means we have to mitigate all of that. So, golf course superintendents are really motivated to save water, but clearly, based on Brian's survey that he shared, and based on all that's going on in the Southwest with the Colorado River, the chickens have come to roost, so to speak, and clearly we have to do better. So while we've done a nice job, we have to improve on our motivation, on our strategies to save water, to put water out less per acre on golf courses, and I'm going to share with some of those strategies with you today. So the first one, I'm going to go through a list of water conservation strategies. The first one is replacing the irrigation system. So the infrastructure lasts 25 to 35 years. So golf courses have to replace the irrigation system eventually. What we've seen is golf courses may go from a distribution uniformity of perhaps 60% all the way up to 80%. So 20% improvement in distribution uniformity. But what we've seen is golf courses typically save 6 to 8% annual water when they upgrade the irrigation system. Next is just maintaining that system at an optimum level. You'd be surprised how many courses I go to where the sprinklers are low to grade or out of level. Well, that has a big impact on distribution uniformity. So simply raising and leveling sprinklers, optimizing flow and pressure through the system, and replacing nozzles. Sprinkler nozzles last 5 to 7 years depending on the irrigation water quality. So replace those nozzles, potentially hire a contractor to come in and raise and level sprinklers, and we're talking about 5 to 10% water savings just by optimizing the system on a routine basis. Next is wetting agents and growth regulators. Our own Dr. Serena, who just walked in the room in the back there, he did some work at New Mexico State University, and Dr. Jim Baird's group at UC Riverside also worked on this. So using wetting agents and growth regulators proactively can enable golf course superintendents to reduce water use and yet provide equally good turf. Now, when I say proactively, that means we have to start early in the season. You can't wait till August to start putting these wetting agents or growth regulators out. It's got to be applied in April, May, and continue on a 3 to 4 week schedule through the season. And then those that are pushing the buttons in the system, the superintendent's assistants, they have to be willing to reduce the water use to see that water savings. Next, this is a big one, eliminating overseeding. Now, this is a tough ask in the Coachella Valley, but nevertheless, if you eliminate overseeding, we've seen 1.5 to 2 acre feet of water per acre savings, which is a significant impact, 25 to 30% water savings in the water budget on those acres that you have removed overseeding. And you're going to get a heck of a lot better year-long Bermuda grass cover and quality. And we could spend an entire day on that topic. So that's a big one that we can focus on another day, but many more courses are now considering eliminating overseeding from southern Nevada, even in Arizona now. That's a big topic. Next, this is a different one, and that is just, we need to change the narrative around what is considered a high-quality playing experience. Normally in America, unfortunately, the bar is set around lush green conditions. And that's how golfers see golf, or quality golf in America generally. We need to change that. The new bar should be set around full turf cover and firm playing conditions. So if we move away from lush and green to a playing experience where we've got grass to play on and the grass is firm and we get good ball roll, man, let's play golf. That's what I want to play golf on. And we need, hopefully, a meeting like this is one way to sort of put those changes in motion. Next is this in-ground soil moisture sensors and using portable moisture sensors. And Matt Mullenbrook is going to talk a little bit more about that. So I won't steal his thunder, but Matt and Tyler Truman out in Coachella Valley, they're the pioneers of using in-ground soil moisture sensors, not in greens, but in fairways, in roughs where all the water savings is really to be had. So shifting from using ET from a weather station to looking into the ground and saying, when is it time to water? And maybe more importantly, when is it not time to water? And using that data to guide those decisions. Turf reduction. Turf reduction is a big one here in Southern California, and that's been a huge strategy to reduce water use. We're talking 3 to 7 acre-feet per acre, depending on where you're located. The dirty little secret there is, though, we have to be careful what you plant after you remove those turf acres. So I would argue that whatever you plant, we got to put less than 1 acre-feet per acre of water in those areas where you have removed turf. So we need to be smart with the landscaping that's put back. If you're planting a bunch of trees, over time, those trees are going to use just as much water as the turf. So we really need to be careful about what we plant when we remove those irrigated turf acres. Inline subsurface drip irrigation, Dr. Serena is going to talk about that, so I won't steal his thunder, but just say that, man, there's a huge untapped potential in watering from underground and eliminating overspray. This is a huge potential, and it's becoming more popular in teen grounds and perhaps in larger areas, larger turf areas. Finally, there, turf conversion. There's 2 versions of this. So the first is converting from cool season to warm season grass that Justin just mentioned. We're talking 25 to 30% water savings. And the Valley Club at Montecito really started that trend here in California. So there's a real water savings to be achieved there. The second version there is converting from some sort of hodgepodge of grasses like 419 and common Bermuda grass to one of these new varieties like Tiff-Tuff, or one of the new varieties coming out of the breeding program at UC Riverside, which they're going to speak to. So I think we're potentially looking at another 10 to 15% water savings when converting to some of these newer varieties. And just to finish up here, this is up in Modesto, where they went through a turf conversion project. You can see on the far left there, they're spraying it out. Just real quick, if you're going to do this, you need to close the golf course, and you need to be really patient with the spray process. It's a 3-month spray process. You can play golf on it. It's going to look ugly, but you're going to get a lot of ball roll. But if you aren't patient with the spray out process, you're going to regret it. The next 2 pictures there are using big roll sod to cut sprigs in. The bottom left there is the sprig material. It looks dead, but it's okay. It's going to grow back. 6 weeks, and then 11 weeks there, you're looking pretty good. And we're looking at about 90 to 100 days for the sprig to grow in process. Of course, you also have the option to sodding. My last slide here, on the left, that's common Bermuda grass. When I talk about Bermuda grass in California, a lot of people think about common. Common kind of gives Bermuda grass a bad name. Look at that lie there on the left. In fact, just look at the shadow on the golf ball, and then look on the right, which is Santa Ana Bermuda grass. The ball sitting up, much better ball lie, much better playing conditions, better traffic tolerance, and less of a winter dormancy period. So it's a quick 8 minutes. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all today, and I look forward to discussing this topic further. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker has been working on the warm season turfgrass breeding program at UC Riverside, and her Twitter bio identifies her as a kikuyu grass enthusiast, so I think we're in good hands with Dr. Marta Pudinowska. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to be here, and actually I'll focus more on Bermuda grass today. I will give you a very quick overview of our breeding program and progress and some of our achievements, let's say. We work with warm season grasses. Why? Of course, because they are more drought tolerant, and even tall fescue, it's not comparable to, let's say, Bermuda grass at the same irrigation level. This is one of our new releases here, and you can see the difference at 60% evapotranspiration replacement. Even though warm season grasses are already more drought resistant than cool season grasses, we still try to improve it. So we have two main objectives of our program, which is to improve the drought tolerance and the tolerance for low quality water, and the other one is reduction and eventually, hopefully, elimination of winter dormancy, which is a major issue with warm season grasses. Nobody wants to see dormant grass in the winter here. We have also some other objectives. We are trying to develop grasses that just would be good, but I would say those two objectives are our main focus right now. We breed two species, Bermuda grass and kikuyu grass. We have a little bit different approach with them. With Bermuda grass, drought tolerance is not such a big problem. It's one of the most drought-tolerant species. Right now, we still try to improve it. However, what we need to focus on is a winter color retention. With kikuyu grass, the color is there already. At least in Southern California, it stays green, or at least greenish, whole winter. But what we need to work on is drought tolerance, which is a little bit worse than Bermuda grass, and also we need to work on the texture and disease resistance. We are more advanced with our Bermuda grass program, which the current breeding process was started in 2012. And over these 10 years, we came from 440 initial hybrids down to 2 superior hybrids that will be released soon, which probably some of you have heard of UCR 17.8 and UCR TP6-3. Here you can see we are really looking into winter dormancy, and this picture was taken end of November at the Napa Golf Course. And you can see color there, and it's comparable to Santa Ana and Tiftaff. However, what is not comparable is the seed head production. UCR 17.8 and 6-3. Up in Northern California, they produce way less seed heads than Tiftaff. This whole purple haze over Tiftaff plot is our seed heads. I would say that you can see here our 4, let's say, top performers from the first selection round. And I would say under reduced irrigation, because we have, let's say, 2 types of studies. We either reduce the irrigation or we just turn water off at all. And this is the NTEP study that was started in 2019. Bermuda grasses are being watered at 35 feet replacement from June to October. And by the end of September, you could see that our grasses are retaining quite good cover compared especially to Tifway and some other cultivars. 17.8 and 6-3, they are a little bit bluish in the color. So here you can see better how they look out in the field. And I would say that they look quite well. They were also included in Riverside, but also in New Mexico in USGA and the warm season reduced irrigation trial. So those grasses, we had Bermuda grasses there, zoysia grass and buffalo grass. Bermuda grass is, of course, the best species in terms of drought tolerance in California. And at 30% of ET replacement, you could see that technically Tiftaf and 17-8 were the last grasses standing there having any kind of green cover and, let's say, any quality in the trial. So these are our two releases that hopefully will be out in the market soon, but we keep working, and these are grasses that were planted for the first time in 2018. This picture was taken after 53 days with no water at all, and this is the third season of the trial. This one is obviously the best this year. You can see this is another plot of the same entry, but we have some more that they also retain green cover under drought very well. And it's not only this year. So we have 3 years, each year 2 cycles, 60 days each cycle, and you can see that the green cover is there. And even though there was quite severe stress applied to those grasses, you can see that they still retain color in the winter. Some better, some worse, but the UCRC 18027 is the one that both takes drought very well, but also keeps color quite well in the winter. This is the nursery they originated from, so you can see quite a lot of variation in the winter color retention. The one entry in the front was shows a very good color retention, not very good quality. So this shows like how we sometimes have to deal with hybrids that will have one trait very good, but the other traits, they need improvement, which makes our work more difficult, let's say. But the traits are there. We need to find a way to put it all together and create better, improved grasses for California and Southwest. Besides reduced irrigation and dry down studies, we also evaluate grasses under high salinity stress. This is the study that includes 4 species and is within a large project with 5 other breeding programs from southern United States. We have St. Augustine grass, seashore paspalum, Bermuda grass, and zoysia grass here. You can see the water that we apply there. The recipe was developed in collaboration with USDA Salinity Lab, and it resembles, the ion composition of the water resembles Colorado River. And you can see how much damage it's making to our soil. Some of the areas are not penetrated by water at all, and the other areas we are getting dry spots. But you can see that many of those grasses can actually they look quite well in such conditions. There are differences both between the species, both among species and also within the species among particular hybrids. St. Augustine grass is not dealing very well with high salinity, and obviously seashore paspalum is the one species that thrive with saline water. But within Bermuda grass and zoysia grass, you can see there is a variation in quality, and some of the hybrids, they can show you they still retain good quality. But in case of Bermuda grass, there was less leaf firing. Just to show you, we have some new studies. That process takes time. These are our studies planted this year. We have one study with 2 our new grasses and Santana and Tiftaf. This is going to be more like a management practices study. We have, talking about Kikuyu, we have new Kikuyu grass test plots. So we are moving forward with Kikuyu grass breeding and also new Bermuda grass test plots with the newer hybrids. And some of those studies you will be able, if you would like to join us for our annual research field day, which this year will happen on September 15. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And continuing the UC Riverside theme, Dr. Marta's colleague, and a name very well known to most of you, I'm sure, in this room. He's the last tenured turf researcher in the UC system. He was once part of the USGA Green Section, and he's going to take us through his latest research and findings on products to help with water usage reduction. Dr. Jim Baird. And he's a little under the weather. He's a trooper to do this today, so I'm not going to shake his hand.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Get out of his way.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, I hope I can make it through this 8 minutes. Oh, the clock is ticking here, so we should go. All right, everybody's got their interpretation of water conservation as it relates to turf grass. Here's my triangle. And so I think the foundation of that triangle, I mean, I'm obviously a turf guy, and you just heard it from Marta, the amazing things we're doing in terms of breeding. I mean, turf species and the cultivars is really integral to this challenge. And so I say this not so much from the standpoint of the golf industry. In Southern California, we're largely using the right grasses. We're using warm season grasses on most of the golf course. But I still go back to the homeowners in the state. I mean, when are we going to stop using cool season grasses? I mean, I've been here 15 years and have been wondering why we use cool season grasses in the state. So hopefully the days are numbered with that. So species and cultivars are obviously important. I list next the irrigator. I've been in this industry for more than 40 years. I know I don't look a day older than 40, but I've been for over 40 years, and I'll tell you, the best superintendents that I've encountered are the best water managers, without a doubt. And I'll go a step beyond that, because I know we have some folks in this room that maybe don't deal with our industry as well. I mean, our industry leads the turf industry in terms of water management. And so that's why we're here, to try to make it even better today. So with that, the irrigation system technology, obviously, and then I'm going to talk to you today about products and how they relate to the whole turf water conservation challenge. So yeah, back in a previous life, this is one of the favorite articles I wrote for the green section about product testing, and it's just amazing. And ever since I arrived at UCR, again, 15 years, we've kind of developed to where we do a lot of product testing to try to help superintendents, try to help golf courses choose the best products for, doesn't have to be water related, could be, you know, disease related or whatnot. And I'll tell you, you know, we can't look at every single product out there. I mean, we do our best, but I'll tell you, the majority of products we test do absolutely nothing. And, you know, so the products I'm going to talk to you about today are the ones that do something, and I think that's obviously critical. So just a little bit about how we test. This is the turfgrass research facility in Riverside, and just a little bit about the different types of areas that we can do various types of studies. But let's talk about the basic ingredients in terms of products that are going to help in terms of water conservation. First and foremost, it's very simple. You know, feed your turf. You know, we talk about, you know, I could talk more broader sense about fertility, but it comes down basically to nitrogen. And we found that's very critical in terms of, you know, that plant being well fed as you start to withhold water. Secondly, plant growth regulators, specifically Tridexapac ethyl, which we know in our industry is Primo Max, goes a long way in terms of helping the plant kind of conserve its energy, and that's very important as you start to withhold water. And then probably the most important key in terms of the basic ingredients is a good soil surfactant or wetting agent. And so this picture shows you from studies we've done in the past, kind of how each individual one looks or combinations. And then if you see in the lower left-hand corner, when you put nitrogen, Primo, and a good growth regulator like Revolution, you put them all together, and that's pretty remarkable turf at 40% replacement of reference ET, which for us, just to give you an idea, at this time of year in Riverside, for Bermuda grass to look good, and again, this is the heat of the battle, that's 75% water we're talking about without anything there. So that's a remarkable water savings in terms of using the right products, for that situation. Okay, so I'm giving you a list of some top performers, and I've kind of given you two categories, sort of products that we've tested under deficit irrigation, products we've tested for more localized dry spots with sort of a soil phenomenon that occurs when you start to dry things out. And just keep in mind with this list that this is our check box. These are we didn't test these products under, if there's a check box, it's because we tested the product under those conditions. So that just want to put it there. And then if you just look at the top two in boldface, probably the most tried and true, most data, the most just good success that we've had have been with two products, one Revolution and the other TriCure, in terms of our industry. And then, like as I said, we've since tested others, which are listed here, and the list will be modified, obviously, as time goes on. So this kind of just shows you some pictures from way back. This was a study we did way back in 2013 at the Preserve near Monterey, which this is back when they used to have cool season turf on fairways before they switched to Bermuda grass. But it kind of shows you, what an untreated area would look like, what the power of Revolution has, and also TriCure. And then other products. It's not just those three I mentioned, but we continually evaluate new products out there. And one that we're really high on is actually more of a fungicide treatment, but it has a lot of plant stress, or imparts a lot of plant stress components, and that's Daconil Action and Appear 2 from Syngenta. And then Civitas, a mineral oil and pigment. And just to kind of show you the broad range of products we're using, nanocarbon, which are extremely small particles of carbon that are biologically active. And we found some good success in terms of using that product in deficit situations. And then biostimulants, it's an area we're trying to wrap our arms around. There's a lot of biostimulants out there. And they're not all created equal, but certainly we've found some good success in terms of helping the turf survive with less water with those types of products. So here's just an example of one of the pictures taken from our salinity trial, which is also kind of drought involved, and just kind of show you a product like Daconil Action and Appear, what it's doing to the turf. And you can look in the upper left-hand corner, you might be thinking, well, that's because you have a pigment in there. But there's another product that you can see in the upper left-hand corner is also a pigment, and it's just covering up dead turf. And so there's really some positive things going on there. So just to wrap it all up, my numbers are a little different than Mr. Whitlock's, but again, going based on what we know that the turf needs at that time of year we're doing the studies, we see about 20 to 25% water savings using the proper products that I've talked about earlier. And then, of course, when you start adding pigments, which can help, not only helps with the turf quality, but also just helps with the color aspect, I think 30 to 40% is not out of the realm of possibility. And then certainly further future research is going to focus on just evaluating these new products, new technologies, but then also combining those with the turf grass species that we're developing at UCR. So you take the very best grasses with the very best products, and you can, that certainly goes a long way in terms of helping to save water. Once again, hope to see you all at Field Day on September 15th. You can just Google UCR Turfgrass Research Field Day for information on registration. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jim. Matt Mullenbrook is the Director of Agronomy at Hillcrest Country Club, and he's just finished an incredible project that's getting amazing reviews. Involved a lot of technology and innovation. He's also been involved in work at Poppy Hills and also worked with Justin at one point at the Olympic Club. So please welcome Matt.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Hi, everybody. We've heard a lot today about supply side of water and irrigation use in golf, and what I'm going to take the opportunity today is to talk to you about the how we're utilizing a lot of the modern tools to manage water on site. Once the water gets to you, it's up to us to really manage it in its most efficient way. So as Jeff had mentioned, in 2018, Hillcrest went under a massive renovation, and wall-to-wall, new irrigation system, greens, tees, fairways, all of it. So we really took that opportunity to address some of the challenges of water and soil and water quality. And we still have a long way to go, but I'm just going to take you through the journey of what we started with. We use 2 water sources at Hillcrest. Potable is part of it, which we took the opportunity to pipe that all to the greens. So the majority of our potable water use is on the greens, which left us with our well water, which has a lot of quality issues when we're talking about bicarbonates and salts and the things that you've heard today. And the third part of that is we have a grassing plan that is Bermuda grass fairways and perennial ryegrass rough. So you have two very distinctly different golf courses, and I'd like to thank Robert from Lakeside for the inspiration on that. So what we've done is addressed some of the quality issues we have, and what's in the toolbox that we're using at Hillcrest. We have a water quality issue, and we used a new irrigation design and some of these other tools. I want to make sure we have enough time to get through all of this. So if you see the bicarbonate number all the way to the left on this, that's what's driving a lot of the problems that we've had at Hillcrest. And in order to get rid of all of these things, it's extremely expensive to put filtration on. So what we're doing is just trying to balance the water through acid injection. We use one of the more modern materials. It's a hydrochloric acid called HCT, and we inject calcium as well to try to balance out some of this water. Still not great, but it's working. The infiltration rates are going up because of the bicarb elimination. So what we did with the irrigation system was the goal was to maximize the uniformity on the property and the control of the water in the given areas. So if you can see all of the red pipelines and red circles, that is an irrigation system that gives you your perfect uniformity, 65-foot spacings, and then along the grass line edges you can see the blue circles and the blue text. That is a supplemental rough system so that we can water the ryegrass independent of the Bermuda grass, which takes considerably less water. So we've really maximized the control of the system that's delivering all of this water. So once we found this wonderful uniform irrigation system, what we realized is that we have very ununiform soils. So we have 5 distinct soil textures on the property at Hillcrest, and it ranges from sand-capped sand all the way to heavier clay. So there is really no pattern to this. So it is it's a just marble cake, really, of soils. So when you're trying to irrigate this for plain conditions, it's very challenging to give these soils what they need to either not to be uniform. So we picked up the bat phone and we called John Dahlman at Toro and said we need the Precision Sense. This is a machine that you run this over your property, and it's an audit of your soils, and it measures your volumetric water content, compaction, soil health, and plant health. What we use it for is volumetric water content and compaction. Well, there's a lot of haul roads and heavy soils out there that you obviously water compacted soils much differently than you would a sand-based soil. So, and here are the maps that it produces, right? So if you look at the one on the left is a compaction, middle is dry, and the maps, the wet is all the way to the right. So like red is the most severely compacted areas on the property, right? And the dry is the lighter color, and then the wet would be the darker color. So after we had this analysis, we took a map of our irrigation system and laid it over each one of these and started to build the programs within our central computer based on your volumetric water content and your compaction. So we're watering by your soil type and texture, and not necessarily your fairway, rough, tee, traditional programming. Which, in order to really quantify all of this, the next step was to put some sort of measuring system out in the property. So in each one of those given areas of compaction and dry, wet, and all those different programs, we dropped a soil sensor in and we used Soil Scout because they had a really great product, and I like the platform. But this is our property, and this is where our soil sensors are. And we put 1 to 2 in each irrigation area to track this. So a lot of this, this is growing and ever expanding, so it's a good footprint. We have 12 sensors out there, and there's gonna be more of that. So this is the platform from the sensor data. So if you can see, I don't know how well you can see this, but all the way to the left, that's after an irrigation event where you can see the volumetric, the water content go up. And then we watch that until it gets to a certain point, and then we start to irrigate and then try to bring that back up. We have a baseline of about 30% in that given area of what is number 8 average program. 30 is where we start to see wilt, where we start to see or at least observe that the soils start to seal up and become hydrophobic. So we try not to let the water, the percentage go below that, because then it becomes problematic on the golf course. So we also use a weather station from Rainbird. We're a Rainbird system, and this is a 10-day snapshot with your ETs. And what we've been doing is tracking our weather station data and our application rates and our sensor data to try to build some sort of predictable model based on weather and percentage loss. We're very beginning of this, so we don't have a whole lot of the models, but I think you can all see. The other tool that we're using in the market is a GreenSight. They provide drone images of the daily flights of the golf course, and this is also Turf Cloud is also by GreenSight, and that takes our soil sensor data and puts it right on the map. So what you can see on this is this is a thermal image of what is dry or hot reflected back. Now we use this as we're just getting into this, and it is a really great way to kind of ground truth what we have, right, and what we can kind of see the forest through the trees. And so let me take you through a practical application of our day and how we use all of these tools, because it's great to have all this data and all of these wonderful things, but how do you actually use this every day? So obviously we check our weather forecast, which all of us are married to Weather Underground, and we'll all fight outside about which website provides better information. We run the current data weather station report, take our moisture sensors and program, take the image, and then we set the nightly irrigation. So here's what a 10-day snapshot of what we've done, right? You have an ET from our weather station, and you have an applied irrigation rate and this is on our number 8 sensor, number 8 average, okay? And that is the volumetric water percentage at 3:30 in the afternoon every day, which is the time that we're setting water, okay? So you can see, as I showed before, so those irrigation events, we had a big irrigation event in the beginning to bring the volumetric water content up, and we watched it go down. And then as the ET was somewhere in the middle there, we were just giving it smaller shots of water. But then we find that the water was getting too dry, and what we were seeing out there, you eventually get to a point where you need to get the volumetric water content back up and you start over. So in times in the summertime, this kind of, the distance between these peaks is shorter. And then when you're in the winter time, it's obviously much longer. And what we're trying to track is how long can we actually go before we get into a hydrophobic soil condition or a situation where we're going to lose grass. So this is to take you through a 5-day image of our drone process here. This is starting on July 25th, so you can see this was roughly right after we ran that irrigation. Pretty green, pretty bright. You have a few spots out there. And trust me, when I first got this back, I thought everything was on fire and that's it. I'm gonna be looking for work, but there's a big contrast here, and that's important to realize. So you can see it starts to change color over a few days, and the thermal images come back, and then we would throw a little bit of water there, and then there's a 5-day period. Green site will run 5 days a week with all of these images, and we're really in the beginning stages of this research. And all of these are some of the tools that are out there, and these are what we've found to be the most applicable. We have tested a lot of products on the property, and this works best for us. As Justin said, there's a million different nuances to everybody's golf course, and they have very specific needs, but this is what's worked for us. And I think that just on the theory of it all, you can really get better control of your water with this type of system and these tools, so then you can at least know where and what to cut. And the turning 400 irrigation heads off and the place really being an eyesore is worked for a while, but I think that there's a lot better ways to do it. What I'd like to see in the future is all of these things working together in a central computer, whether it's Toro or Rainbird. It's very difficult to work with these as silos and process all of this data into a functional piece of information, but we're working on that. And also, so we can save water, and we can all sleep better as managers of all of this irrigation. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Matt. Our last speaker before we break off and have some questions and panel discussion is Dr. Matteo Serena. Dr. Serena is new with the USGA, and he was name dropped at the US Open Press Conference this year. I'm not sure if everybody was expecting that, but good for him. Good start with the new boss, Mike Wan. Over the next few months, and I think today he's going to give us some highlights, though, of the positive results of the application of subsurface drip irrigation in golf. So, Dr. Matteo, please come on up. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, I wasn't expecting that either from Mike, but that's what happened. So, how many of you before today never heard of subsurface drip irrigation? Can you raise your hand? Okay, some of them. So I'm here for you. So at least I have like 4 or 5 people. That's good. How many of you are using it? Wow, great. And who's planning to use it in the future? Okay, if you guys need help, please contact me. I'm here, for that. So I have a quick slide here on the history. It's not the system. What I'm trying to communicate is like it's older than a sprinkler system. It's being widely utilized in agriculture and in landscaping, commercial landscaping use has been used like since the 1980s. So why is it not as well utilized on golf courses? It's probably because of the cost and the difficulty of application. So quick design, normally a system is installed with a filter and a pressure regulator after the valve. Other pieces that go into the system is a hair release, automatic flush valve, and you have to check with the manufacturer because some of the newer systems do not require those type of devices. You want to also have a manual flush valve, that way you can, if you had to make a repair or if any debris or material go in, you can flush them out. And then you have the tubing material. That one is different depending on the brand that you're using, who makes it. That one would also change your delivery rate, and the spacing could vary. So I'm talking about the spacing between the emitter on the tubing. And then another design that you have to take into consideration is depth of installation. So when we started working with this system about 20 years ago, we always had the answer. They say like, oh, it doesn't work, you know, like you had to test, you had to bring it into a golf course to make sure that it works. So we did that. 2016 project in New Mexico at the course Las Campanas, which is located in Santa Fe. It was supported by USGA. We converted 12 tees and retrofitted with subsurface drip irrigation. So the club is wall-to-wall bent grass, so that includes a tee. And they were sand capped at 6 inches. And so 12 tees, 3 of each. We used the most popular tubing system that was available. So we had 3 with the Toro, 3 with Rainbird, 3 Netafim, and 3 with the Hunter. And then we took 2 tee boxes that had the sprinklers and used them as a control. So the installation was done by placing the tubing 12 inches apart and at a depth of 6 inches. That one, it was so we were allowing the chance for aerification up to 5 inches. As you see a sign there where they were due to aerification, and they didn't want to trust that they had the right depth, so they just making sure they put sign. But eventually they ended up aerifying, and everything worked out pretty fine. There were other systems. The system also, during the installation, we put a filter, pressure regulator, hair release, automatic, all of the manufacturer specification that were in the description. We placed water meter at the valve for the drip system and for the sprinkler system, so we can measure how much water goes out. And then we had 2 types of installation. One that we trench directly into the turf and put the drip down. Another one that involved the sod removal, trenching, and then the sod was placed back. So what we discovered on the installation, it was that the trenching in, at least on bent grass, resulted in a longer recovery time. So right now when they're doing the other tees or more installation of that, the preferred method is to remove the sod, install the system, and then replace it. Other thing that we found was when you're starting to cut the water and reducing, and you have trees around the tee boxes, those are thirsty too, and they require water. And so we were trying to see, what is the issue there? Why do we have clogging? Is it not working? Reality, they were like big root trees. They were picking up more water more effectively than the turf. So root pruning was necessary. The other thing is like proper installation. So when you leave the crew unattended and you leave, you tell them you have to put them at 6 inches, but then the drip ended up at 8 or 10 inches deep, and so water was not able to rise to the surface and water it. The other issue was small filters that we placed into before the valve. They were clogging much faster than we were expecting, especially when poor quality water was used. And then at the beginning, they were all controlled by this manual timer, and so those ones required a lot of time going around the courses and setting it up. So they were kind enough to do it every month, but it's better to have them connected to an automatic controller. Overall, it was a success. The course is extremely happy with the system. There were no difference. We visited this past summer, a few months ago. There were no difference compared to the overhead irrigation. And the water use was substantially reduced by 50 to 80% in a lot of those occasions. The part the course liked the most is actually the reduction of the vegetation that is grown from this out-of-play area. You have these isolated tee boxes, very difficult to water a round shape with sprinklers. And so when you're starting to just directly the water into like a narrow area and you leave everything else unwatered, it just stopped growing and we're in the desert. They also are seeing less incidence of disease, in particular dollar spot, fewer weed germination, so there is less POA that germinates on the tee boxes, and then they're also seeing less soil compactions, and that is leading to fewer needed of aerification. And the other thing is that you can irrigate and water anytime, even while golfers are playing, they do not notice that. Other information is cost. We get asked that a lot. Right now, not taking account of inflation, we can say there's approximately $1,500 to buy material to retrofit about 1,000 feet of a tee. These do not include like installation cost, which the course they do it in-house. Aerification, there's an easy, like you wanted to aerify above the drip system, that way you don't damage it. On some of the older system, we have not seen any clogging happening yet, either by root intrusion. Each manufacturer has their own system to prevent that from happening, and also from buildup of bicarbonate of any calcium debris. So we haven't seen any of that happening. Next, the course is renovating 9 holes, and they're putting a valve for each tee. Some of the holes have up to 9 tees, and they're putting a valve so in a way that in the future when they're renovating a tee, they're going to install a subsurface system on each one of them. And we're also planning to do a larger area because we want to know if this one, besides this isolated tee box, it will also work on a fairway or larger areas. With that, now I think we're opening the panel of discussion and we can take all of your questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Serena. The other speakers, if you don't mind coming up, Justin, Dr. Baird, Matt. And I'm going to ask them if they want to ask each other anything, and that'll buy us a little time to give you guys a chance to come up to the microphones on either side, because we've gotten some amazing information, and I'm sure you have questions. But yeah, please talk about. Take a seat and we not have oh, okay. So from what you've heard today, does anybody have a question for does anyone on the panel have a question for somebody else on the panel? Do we want to settle this water usage disparity percentage? Guys, do you want to?
Where did that come from?
Hash that out?
All right, so when you talk about research plot, you're going to hate me, but when you talk about research plots, you're in a flat area, everything has the same exposure, north-south exposure, it's pretty much the same soil type, but when you go out on a golf course, just like Matt spoke to, they had this precision sense tool map all these different various soil types. He's got north and south exposures. So, if you're saving 30% on a research facility on a flat area, I don't think that equates to a golf course. There's so much variability. I like to be conservative, and my numbers were about half, I think, of what yours were. And hey, I'd like to be realistic. I'd love to see that, we're 25, 30%. But I just know that when you go from a research facility to a golf course, man, there's so much more variability involved with cart traffic and foot traffic and exposures and all that. So a little more realistic, I think, is a little bit lower target savings there. I would like to ask the group from UCR, though, your projections for when do you think some of these new varieties will be released? I mean, talking to Jimmy Fox in the room from Evergreen Turf earlier, with these turf conversion projects, there's so many courses in California, in southern Nevada, and in Arizona that are wanting to convert to one of these new varieties, but there's not enough grass available. We need new grasses. We need them today, honestly. So what are the projections there to release these new grasses?
So everyone's, I think, been hearing about our 2 new Bermuda grasses. They just have their experimental number still, 17.8 and 6-3. The patents have been filed for those, and the universities started discussions with potential licensees. So we're hopeful that there'll be some limited release in 2024 of those grasses. So that's kind of the best case scenario there. But it's always, as Marta showed today, the process never ends. It's a continuous process, and the next grasses we release will be better than these, and so forth and so on. So we're excited about that. And the one thing I want to say is when we started this, whole process, 10 years ago, obviously our number one focus is keeping Bermuda grass green in the wintertime, because in my estimation or opinion, that's why a lot of Californians don't have Bermuda grass, or even golf courses, why they have to overseed or do other things. So when I started to see what we were producing, I'm thinking like, well, we're definitely making headway, but we're not there yet to where, like, number one, we're going to produce a Bermuda grass that can stay green in Las Vegas. And those of you know Las Vegas in the wintertime, it gets cold. So we're not there yet. And my thoughts were for Southern California that, okay, well, our golf courses are predominantly Bermuda grass, so when are we going to produce something that they want to switch? Well, when we started this process, we then quickly realized that there's a huge variation in the species in terms of drought resistance. And so we've capitalized on that relatively quickly, even with these 2 new grasses. And so I think, in my opinion, still, we're not talking about products on flat areas, Brian. We're talking about a grass now. But you're talking easily 20% or more savings, I think, just compared to some of the conventional grasses that you guys have on your golf courses now. And I'm talking about Bermuda grass. So I think it's something that I think it bodes maybe exploration a lot sooner than anticipated in terms of, number one, as I mentioned earlier, I'd love for a lot of Californians to replace their cool season grass with warm season grasses, and I know Northern California courses are doing that. But, I think, we're going to be there a lot sooner, where you might want to replace your old Bermuda grass with a much, much better in terms of playability and much better in terms of drought resistance grass.
Sorry, I would just add that besides those 2 that should be ready, as you mentioned, 2024, the whole process takes about 8 to 10 years for most of the turf grasses, but it's happening. We are not waiting with the upcoming cultivars for the next 10 years, so we have some that are, let's say, further down the pipeline, so we are expecting that the next releases won't be in next 8 or 10 years, but sooner after those.
And how much is mowing height factor into your research and in terms of maybe thinking of beyond obviously golf, but people wanting to use them for greenscapes like that out there? In terms of the actual, because I know you mentioned kind of one of the ones that really had a nice depth of green, but you said the turf just wasn't it wasn't great in terms of its, I assume it's
For the
density.
So, mowing height, that changes a lot actually. So most of the types in the first round of selection that we do under fairway mowing height. And with this, it's fairly easy. So we are, most of the cultivars that are in the market, they're either common or they're hybrids between African and common Bermuda grass. So what we try to do, we are trying to extend the variation, let's say, which results in like some of the hybrids, they will inherit more, let's say, desirable traits, and some of them will less. So sometimes it happens that it will have perfect winter color retention or perfect drought resistance, but you will have problems with texture, for example. But there is also a difference for like how those grasses can be utilized. So for a winter color retention, the higher you go, the worse it gets actually. So I think it will be way easier to develop cultivars that will stay green in the winter for golf, for fairways, hopefully for greens, but when you have roughs or lawns, I think it will take more time for us to develop those, because the same hybrids that will do well under fairway mowing height, they might go more off color when you mow them, let's say in 1.5 or 2 inches.
I don't see anybody coming up to the microphones. There we go. We have a taker.
I'll be the first one. My name is Robin Shelton from Newport Beach Country Club. As we're talking about water, irrigation systems seem to be things that come up from superintendents. And as we look at irrigation systems replacing ours, we're hearing $4 million, $5 million, and that's a big price tag. So my question is for you all here, anybody else that might know, how do you justify that? How do you say, hey, what's the return on that? Or how can you take that to an owner and say, hey, we're going to spend $5 million and here's why it's worth it?
There is no ROI on replacing an irrigation system.
Yeah, I agree. It's an infrastructure piece, just the same as there's no ROI on replacing the front entrance road and resealing the parking lot. It's something that's essential to the operation that wears out. And unfortunately for everybody in this area, there's a lot of new modern technologies, and there's a lot of new designs that will help conserve water. So of course with the parking lot, there's really little technologically advanced asphalt surfacing, but irrigation is much different, and especially at this time, a $4 and $5 million investment, and it's now is really just an asset replacement, and it's going to get more expensive. Even during the construction cost of irrigation systems did not go down in 2008. The acreage kind of plateaued, and then as the economy recovered, the irrigation systems continue to go up, and now it's gone up astronomically in the last 2 years. But that's an asset replacement that's never going to get cheaper at any point. It hasn't historically. So as far as an ROI, I think I don't think that there is one, other than you're going to have more efficient use of your water, possibly a little bit of labor savings here and there, but really it's about an infrastructure piece.
The good news is we're changing to HDPE pipe, which has a much greater longevity than PVC. Now the sprinklers, the valves, they're still about 20 years or so. You're going to have to replace those. We got to.
Certainly, Mr. Gross first. First of all, Jim, Marta, congratulations. Those new grasses are game changers, and it's going to be exciting to get them out into the industry. And that's my question. We have new grasses. Is there any thought to the research about getting them in the field without shutting down your golf course? To me, that's the big limitation. Right now, you got to shut down, you got the disruption, you got the loss of revenue. What's on the horizon for establishment? Maybe Brian or Mateo could address that.
Pat, you're exactly right. I mean, we're talking about 3 to 4 month closure to really do it right. Some courses in California did a conversion, semi-conversion, without closing the golf course. I saw those golf courses this summer. While they're better than they used to be, I don't think they're really delivering the expectations that they had hoped for. So a course closure is probably necessary. But to your point, and again, Jimmy Fox and I talked about this morning, we really need to get together as a group and consider talking to Dr. Thompson over there about funding some projects where we optimize the killing of the existing grasses and optimize how we establish the new grass. I mean, obviously sodding is a lot faster, right? But sodding is $30,000 an acre, more or less. It ain't cheap. Not an option for everyone. So we need to come up with some other options. And we're talking about Bermuda grass. If we go to zoysia grass, wow, we're really talking about an investment there. So there's some hurdles to get through, and I don't have the answers right now, Pat, but great question. Mr. Emerson.
Sean Emerson, I feel good today because I was a golf course superintendent for 35 years and I was classified as an idiot. I've been out as a superintendent for less than a year and I'm called an expert now. I moved from Desert Mountain in Arizona where I used 1 billion gallons a year on 7 golf courses. We had soil sensors in the ground. Brian came out and things like that for 10 years. Over 10 years, we managed with soil sensors, Field Scout, UGMO, drones. So they're great tools and great. You're leading the charge out here right now. Biggest thing on the grasses, I'm now living in Charlotte, North Carolina, Tiff-Tuff. I've looked at Tiff-Tuff on all the golf courses there. They're good in their pockets. I think what's great about UC Riverside is your area. So just like you were talking about water movement from different sources, know where you're at and try each grass because your specific climate of shade, orientation to the sun is different. Tiff-Tuff is great in some areas. Tahoma is great. If I go to Texas right now, zoysia is everywhere. So I think that that's very important. And Jimmy knows that, $7,000, $8,000 to sprig, $30,000 to sod. This is all an economic to a lot of people. Unfortunately, I get in the meetings about talking about grass because I was a golf course superintendent, but it ends up being an economic equation. Most clubs need to start their capital funding now, and irrigation and things like that. So start the conversation, like you said earlier, now. And I think that's the biggest thing is we need to talk it. And the biggest thing, we have to have one voice. I lived in Arizona with Mark Woodward, and we had to get the Southwest Section PGA, we had to get everybody together to speak one voice. And that's what you're doing a fantastic job here. And make sure it's the same message. But Sacramento is not going to be the same as Riverside. Riverside's not going to be the same as San Diego. I really think you should be breaking it up and talking everything low. I believe it's local. Start at the groundwork and then talk to the local officials in your area. That to me is the biggest thing because I get into these meetings, everybody talks these big grandeur, right? But when they get there tomorrow, it gets lost. This great admiral at the University of Texas said, what can you do every day? Make your bed. Set of accomplishment starts there. So the key for everybody in this room, and I've said this 100 times, you got to do something tomorrow. If you go back and you're going to put it off till Monday, you're never going to start it. So what can you do tomorrow to start your process? I think that's the keyest things I tell everybody is what's tomorrow. Number one, get an aerial, get the square footage of your whole golf course, check your nozzles, 2 holes, 3 holes, whatever. But if we don't get out of this room today and start tomorrow, right, Mike? They just put it off and put it off. If you don't save water today, you just need to save more water tomorrow. My father told me, how do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time. How do you save water? 1 gallon at a time. Start small because it has a big impact. And congratulations to everybody in this room. So you've done a great job.
Thank you. Just curious, Matt, on that topic, how much of your project was stuff that members maybe looked at and wondered why you were doing it, and what's just the reception been in terms of water conservation?
Well, it's funny because a lot of, I'm going to present a lot of this at our Green Committee meeting tonight. This has been a 2 to 3 year process of bringing all of these different pieces of technology in, and really the last few months we've been kind of integrating all of it at once. But I've shared this with several different committees, and really, I mean, any way that the club can save water, conserve water, and keep the conditioning the way that they want, you have to meet an expectation until you can't, right? And these are ways that are, and products in the market that we can use today to save water. So they're very open to all of it. As far as water conservation, the discussion was around removing kikuyu grass from the property and adding more Bermuda grass. There's you know, then we put ryegrass rough in, so there's a little bit of a delta there, but still, when you look at the acreage between all kikuyu and expanding a lot of these areas into Bermuda grass, you're probably better off slightly in the scenario. And especially with all of these pieces of technology we're putting in the ground, and we're just getting better control of our day-to-day irrigation. We're not running as many heads for as long, so it does add up to small gallonage increments, but it's hard because we have a new golf course, so we don't know what we've saved from the old golf course because it's a completely different design and different grassing. So when you start to look at those things in the first few years of the golf course being built and grown in, it's a lot more water. So right now is when we're at the time where we can really start to track and fine-tune all of these products that we're putting in. And I think in the coming years, we're going to see more and more a greater water savings out of the property. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Serena, a little more on drip. Where do you see things going in terms of kind of a dream scenario? Is it moving beyond tees? Is it something we see in fairways and approaches? Any concepts there, or is it? And what's really held back adoption to this point so far?
I think one of the things that held it back the most is just how inexpensive water is still. You know, when you look at the prices. You know, the irrigation system, right now it makes sense to have it on sprinklers because they're still good. They have 80% to sometimes 85% of uniformity. But if you have to cut the irrigation by like half, then it makes sense to switch to subsurface drip. But if it's still like more expensive, that's like the limiting factor in my opinion. It makes a lot of sense to have it in smaller areas, such as isolated tee boxes or difficult to irrigate bunker surrounds. We want to have a test on a larger area, but we still don't know if it's feasible. You know, we have no idea. You know, how many zones you have to do, what's the size of the header line. All of those are questions that we need to answer. So.
Jeff, just one question.
Oh, yes, please.
So first, of course, Matt, you're welcome for the headache. Secondly, can you speak to the human capital you need to utilize the tools that you guys have invested in?
Sure.
That annual investment with personnel and education and skill level of those
Absolutely.
people?
So currently we have in our management team, we have two assistants, and one of them, their sole responsibility, or their responsibilities are to manage 4 techs, irrigation spray techs, and the spray program for the fertility and pest controls, and the irrigation system. So there's 4 people constantly. Basically, Monday is your day for your spray applications, and then the rest of the week and into the weekend is managing an irrigation system and utilizing these tools. Now, the green site drone imagery does require a license, a unmanned aircraft certification or license, so that's something that has to be done. So our assistant in charge of this has that credential. So there's that investment, and you have a lot to manage. Like the golf course has 3,000 irrigation heads. It has miles and miles of drip line around bunkers with all the flush valves and filters. I mean, managing an irrigation system is not a one-tech job. deal especially in this area. If you want to maximize efficiency and get any semblance of an ROI, if you could find one, you need the personnel to manage those things. It's not set it and forget it. It's really not, because even especially your water quality will dictate so much of how long your nozzles last, how many times you're getting clogged nozzles if you get sand in your water, all of those types of things. But really, it is a constantly managing your irrigation system. So in order to really maximize it, you need the personnel. So your question, Robert, we have 4 techs that I would say the majority of their weekly 40 to 50 hours a week is probably on irrigation related maintenance.
And aren't you on the flight path for Santa Monica Airport?
Yes. So when the president comes in, we see see all the big
the drone's not going up.
No, the drone's not going up that day. No.
All right. Anybody else? We've got lunch waiting. We've got one more. All right.
Come on up.
Matt, I like that you're using quantitative and qualitative data to make your reasoning of why you're using water. Have you started looking at your baseline of 30% and started using wetting agents to see if you can reduce that?
We do use wetting agents. A lot of the problem on our property was when we first opened, during the construction, they scraped all of the topsoil off of it to get rid of the kikuya, right? So you're dealing with a subgrade that has almost no infiltration rate. So when you're spraying a wetting agent, your rate structure is based on depth and how far you can get that into the ground. And we couldn't get anything past 1/8 of an inch, so it really was ineffective, and it would actually all wind up in the low parts of the golf course when we would try to water it in. So now, as it's more established and we've had an aggressive top dressing program, we are seeing a different rate structure that's becoming successful on the property. And a lot of that 30% is being driven. We also have high salts in our soil. So in order to keep the detrimental salts in some sort of solution so that we don't have an orange golf course or we don't have salt-induced wilt, we have to keep that percentage. So until we get kind of away from that and our water quality changes, we're always going to have to kind of keep it a little bit more moist. If you look at the sensors that's in our sand cap, we take that down to 10% volumetric water content. Our salts are less than 1 decimeters. It's really a whole different deal to manage, and those sensors show that. So our baseline is really only going to change on that property once we can address the water quality issues.
All right. Well, thank you all. You all gave us a lot to think about. Really appreciate your time and effort today. Everybody, we are going to reconvene at 1:30. Lunch is right outside, so don't exit out through the glass doors. Head over to those doors on the side to get a bite to eat. And please, a round of applause again for our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you.